It's so surprising that movie still holds up. When Steven came to us and said, I'm going to give you a couple years and an unlimited budget to make the best dinosaurs you possibly can. Great, well, let's do that. Jurassic Park, man, at the beginning of the day, you'd see like 40 shots there, and how are we going to get that done? Steven Spielberg yells out, I love it! And that's the shot we used. The ILM sends down that famous footage test of the T-Rex walking through a field. Stan just goes like, our days are over. I've partnered with Jim Cameron, and we're making a company called Digital Domain, and you're its first employee.
Is there any times where you felt when CG was introduced into the industry that it was abused?
Oh yeah, we did that a lot. I see where our work suffers sometimes because we just don't have the time to do it. We were working on Terminator 2, and I get a call, make sure you are running when you come back.
Oh my gosh.
That was a wild night.
Hey, Craig.
Hi, guys. Jamie, Steven, good morning.
Hey.
I guess in your case is good evening.
Good evening. Craig, I hate to be nosy, but I can see you've got some musical instruments and a xenomorph. Yeah, it looks like a xenomorph on the right.
Oh, yeah, that was an old fiberglass statue. Like a limited edition thing of like 500 that came out of Mexico.
Oh, really?
It weighs about 200 pounds. So I got so much stuff of the early eBay. Like here's my favorite thing. Check this out.
Oh, is that some kind of grid from one of the Alien movies?
You win!
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a floor panel that was used on the Nostromo and on the Sulaco.
Has Ripley put her foot on that panel by any chance?
I don't know who stepped on it.
Yeah, Craig, let's just start off with yourself, who you are, your name, and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Craig Caton, and I'm a visual effects artist living in Los Angeles. I've been doing this for about 45 years now. Right now, I am the creative director of 3D animation and visual effects for the New York Film Academy here in Burbank, and I'm happy to be on your show.
Well, we are more than happy to have you on the show, Craig, and we will be talking Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters.
Awesome.
All the stuff that you've probably spoke about over 45 years, millions of times. But it all started, and correct me if I'm wrong, Planet of the Apes, the original?
Yeah, I saw Planet of the Apes when I was a little kid, and then I did like 3 different makeups, and the third one was pretty spot on. I was only 12. I thought, wow, this would just be a fun way to make a living. So I pursued that, and I was lucky enough that here in America, there was this book called Who's Who in America, right? In it was a man named Dick Smith, and he was like one of the most famous makeup artists in the industry ever. He invented the makeups and effects for the original Exorcist, and then lo and behold, inside was his address. So I sent him a letter and some pictures, and 2 weeks later I get a phone call, and it's from Dick Smith. And I thought it was my college roommates pranking me at first, and I realized it was him, and then we had a nice conversation, and we ended up, he had about 7 different makeups that he wanted me to try, like old age makeups. And one of them was a clown makeup. And I would do these makeups, and I would send them to him along with a blank cassette tape with questions. And he would answer all of my questions on cassette. And he would even give me like the new techniques that he was just developing. And then after that, he said, I see no reason for you not to go to California and do this. And so he provided me with a couple introductions down here. Most notably, he provided me with an introduction to a man named Stan Winston.
Wow.
We'll talk about him more later, right? Then in the late 70s, this movie came out, Alien, right? That was it. That was like, man, that was such a cool monster. And it was so different, and I realized I got to go do stuff like Alien. And so I went out and I did something that I thought would benefit my knowledge of animatronics and makeup. And so I went and I studied, and I became an X-ray technologist.
Oh, really?
I learned so much about how the body moves and the joints and stuff, which really helped later. So I got my X-ray certificate. I did X-rays up in Portland, and I came down here, and 2 weeks later I had a job at Makeup Effects Labs in the Valley, and never took another X-ray again.
Was there any conversations early on when you started there of, we want to do mechanics and puppeteering?
Yeah, it was like one of the very first thing. Okay, so I'll tell you, my first job was on this movie called Nettle Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin.
Right.
They were in hiatus from the movie, and they said, well, if you want to like sweep the floors and organize cabinets for 2 weeks for free. And I said, okay. I swept all the floors. And I reorganized everything so that it made more sense. Like all the molding supplies go here. And then 2 weeks later, it turned out I was the only person there who knew where everything was.
That is genius. That is genius. Because then they're calling on you for, oh, hey, Craig, do you know where this paint is? And you're like, oh, yep, it's in the cabinet top right.
I grew up on a ranch up in Washington State, repairing farm equipment and stuff like that. So I had some mechanical inclination. And they're like, can you do the mechanics for these monsters? And I go, yeah. And so I started doing the monster mechanics and animatronics. And the first projects with them I did was just a big hand puppet of this worm, this little sandworm that comes out of the sand and tries to bite the guy. And then they said, hey, climb under this set and puppeteer. And I'm like, okay. And that's when I realized that portraying monsters is really fun. Doing puppeteering creatures and bringing them to life. So if someone pays you to build toys and film you while you play with them, take that job.
That's every kid's dream, isn't it?
Right? And that was kind of the way the ride was like, oh, we're gonna make a green ghost that eats lots of food and have fun. Okay, let's do it.
And obviously, they're talking about Slimer or Onion Head. Was
Onion
that someone?
Head, yeah, that was his real name. One of my favorite stories about Onion Head was that it was a costume that you wore kind of like from the waist up, right? In the costume was a puppeteer named Mark Wilson, a really great puppeteer. And I was Onion Head's mouth. So I would lay down on the ground with this rod and move it up and down to open his mouth. And you could twist it and get some really great designs. And the thing was that we used real food. We used real potatoes and gelatin. And Mark would shove all that stuff into the puppet's mouth, and it would fall through his body and land on my face.
So you'd get the scraps.
Yeah.
You'd get slime with scraps.
So every day after we puppeteered, this went on for a month and a half, I would take my puppeteer's suit to the cleaners next down the street. And like the first day, they're like, oh, okay, and then they're like $5. Here you go. Next day. By the end of a month and a half, they were so tired of cleaning junk out of my suit, they were charging $40 to do it. And it was like, wow.
What kind of questions? Were they asking any questions?
I think I had to re-explain myself like 10 or 20 times. I feel like, we're doing this puppet and he's eating food and it comes through and it hits me in the face. And like a kind of week, how did you do this? And like, with the food face, and it just became this almost a running gag. You're feeding a ghost? What?
What happened? Are you okay?
He slimed me.
That's great! Actual physical contact!
What was rehearsals like as a puppeteer?
It was this big evolution because in the early days, we would just try to get the puppet done in time to get it to set and puppeteer it.
Right.
And then we started getting more experience and stuff. But then when I was working at Stan Winston's, we had this great opportunity to really test the puppeteer and really put them through their paces before we ever got to set. Whatever you build, it has to fulfill its function in the script, right?
Definitely.
And, there's this scene where this creature has to open a doorknob. How are we going to make this creature believably open this doorknob, right? And people go, when did that happen? I go, Jurassic Park in the kitchen. And so we have to come up with a believable way, as you know, to sustain that belief.
Did you just go off the script, or was there any information of how they were going to shoot it?
Yeah, we would have a lot of conversations, and occasionally we would have epic failures.
And with Stan Winston, you had time to test out the puppets.
Yeah, and especially like a movie like Jurassic Park. Man, we made that movie so many times before we ever got to set. Like for instance, they built on one of the stages of Universal Studios. They built the entire kitchen set out of cardboard and containers, right? And then we made cardboard cutout silhouettes of the raptors, and we filmed the little shots in there, and then someone had built a miniature set, and they were using a little lipstick cam with little creatures, and they were shooting that.
You were previewing. You was like,
yeah. not the CG previs we have now, but with, you know, practical previs, I guess. So what was amazing, because when we got to set, on the average, we did like 3 or 4 takes, and then Steven got what he wanted. And we had this great big cork board with all of the shots. And at the beginning of the day, you'd see like 40 shots there. And how are we going to get that done? And like, bam, bam, bam. By noon, we were like more than halfway done. You're like, wow. One of my favorite moments in Jurassic Park is I was puppeteering the insert raptor head, which was basically just a puppet. I mean, a hand puppet, right? And I got another guy with levers. He's opening and closing the jaws, a guy named Crash. And then another guy named Chris, who was on the eye mechanisms and with remote controls. And we were doing that portal scene where the raptor goes up to the window of the kitchen and it looks in. But as I mentioned before, Alien is one of my favorite movies. And there's this great moment where the camera is in the cat carrier behind Jonesy looking up at the alien. The alien is looking down into it. And as he looks at it, he tilts his head. And when I saw that, I said, oh my gosh, this alien is sentient. He's problem solving. He's figuring things out. And it was just one of those magical moments. And so I said to the other puppeteers, hey, let's try that scene from Alien where he tilts his head. And so I'm in there, I move the eye, and I turn the head and I tilt it. Someone in the background yells out, you're tilting the head. And right then and there, Steven Spielberg yells out, it's like Alien. I love it.
Oh, amazing.
And that's the shot we used. And he just got it, you know, and it was great. For me, that was like probably one of the most magical moments in my career was doing that one and getting so well received.
That's incredible.
I was there for the clever girl one too. We had an empty stage, and they put me there with the raptor puppet, and then they put the Muldoon Hunter guy next to me. And then they took jungle plants and they dressed it around us. And so we were just the camera, and if you pulled the camera back, we'd just see a big empty stage, right? You know, and we do the move, and he goes clever girl, and what you don't notice, if you look really closely at the shot, you'll notice that this is the only shot of the raptor where the raptor has a camel hump on his back.
Okay.
That's my head under a camouflage net. And at the very last second of the shot, the edge of my glasses poke out of that net. So you'll see you really don't know what it is, but you see a little glint just before the cut. And that was my glasses.
Clever girl.
Did you know at the time, like, what kind of impact this movie would have?
When Steven came to us and said, I'm going to give you a couple of years and an unlimited budget to make the best dinosaurs you possibly can, and you go, great, well, let's do that. And a lot of the stuff that we were doing, like, was building up to doing something that big, too, so it was great. So 3 movies that come to mind that were... that we knew at the time that we were actually working on a special movie, or at least we thought we were. And those Ghostbusters was one of them. The second movie that I had a wonderful time working on, and I think when people see the movie, they'll know that the crew really came together, and that was Tremors.
Oh, amazing.
You know, we had such a great time making that movie. And then, of course, the other third one was Jurassic Park, and just because we took it so seriously, and we were just trying to break new ground, and you know, and that was the whole point in that. What
was it like to just, you know, previs and plan action sequences compared to kind of like today? It's
really different now. I mean, we would try to guess and assume what camera angles they would want, and try to like, okay, how are we going to wrangle the cables out of this shot so they don't see that and stuff like that. But then, you know, when previs came around, I did previs for a couple of shows. I worked at the 3rd floor, and I worked at Halon and did previs on the remake of Total Recall. And I just felt like, man, when you have good previs tools and you can lock down things so well. And I thought it was great because like we do the scene, like, and then the director would say, hey, put in some steam vents coming out of the side of this elevator. Then the producer goes, okay, steam element, you know, $500, another steam element. And it not only became a great previs tool, but it became a great way to budget your movie.
Yeah.
In other cases, you get to have a lot of fun experimenting with things that you may not be able to do beforehand. For instance, on Total Recall, they wanted the main actor to turn around, grab the guy's gun, disarm it, and then a camera slides around him 360, And so we worked that out in Maya in Previs, right? We worked it out with the director of photography. He said, wow, I think we can do this, And then they went and shot it, and it works beautifully. And that was just because it was so well planned out in Previs.
Talking about the use of computers and CGI, you were there during that transition from practical effects to CGI, of course. Anybody that is in the industry knows of that era when it kind of transitioned. And a big movie for that was Jurassic Park, of course. Can you just paint that picture?
I can't remember which we did first, if we did Batman Returns or Terminator 2 first. I think we did T2 first. And the interesting thing is, like, on T2, there were like, there's the number of shots we're going to do practical, and there's the number of shots they're going to do in CGI. And at some point, they realized they could do more shots practically. So we would gain a couple shots, but then some shots, they go, hey, we can do this in CGI. And so they would gain. And it was about an even Steven, right? And then Batman Returns comes out, and we have all these penguins with rocket packs. And then Boss Films is dipping their fingers into the digital world. When I saw the movie, I thought, okay, they got away with this because those penguins are so dark in the alleys and stuff. And so there was so much that we could hide, or they can hide in that. Then we did Jurassic Park. And then one day on Jurassic Park, the ILM sends down that famous footage test of that they shot, did of like this T-Rex walking through a field. And it's so interactive. And you just go, wow. Stan got the footage, and he calls all of his supervisors in, and they look at it, and we look at it, and Stan just goes like, our days are over, that they can do this, So that led to an interesting conversation with Stan, and that was that Stan wanted in on this. He wanted in on, being able, because he wanted to be able to create what he called full body characters and stuff. And I had an old Amiga computer, right? And I was doing logos with Lightwave, but Stan thought I knew everything there was to know about CGI. And so he said I'd go out and spend a lot of my money and build us a CGI lab. And so I did. I went out and I got 6 really, really expensive SGI computers and a bunch of copies of what at the time of the software was called Softimage.
Softimage, yeah.
And we bought a film scanner, and the next thing you know, Stan had a digital studio, right? And like 2 or 3 days after that, Stan comes up to me and says, I've partnered with Jim Cameron and Scott Ross, and we're making a company called Digital Domain, and you're its first employee. And I went, okay.
Movies to this day with Jurassic Park, I think it's one of the movies that when fans hear that there's still going to be puppets in there, there's something is extra exciting to know that they're still keeping that alive,
That was one of the things I really appreciated in Alien Romulus, was their dependence on all this practical stuff, and it was marvelous. It was just so much fun to watch. One of the big successes for Jurassic Park was that they had a really good producer, and we created this liaison so that we could make the dinosaurs match. And what we ended up doing is we would take big pieces of like dinosaur skin, right? And then we would paint like the base coat layer, and then the next layer would be the base coat plus the next layer. And so we kind of gave them a paint guide out of the real thing, and they matched it perfectly. It's so surprising that movie still holds up.
It really does. What's something that modern VFX artists can still learn from those practical effects days? I'm sure it still applies, doesn't it? Everyone wants to replicate the practical things.
One of the things I am still seeing is I will see someone they'll sculpt a creature or something. They'll sculpt the left side in ZBrush or whatever, and then they'll mirror it for the other side, and the creature ends up being perfectly symmetrical, and there is no such thing. And also, I when it comes to designing creatures. One of the things we did in the old days is we would design a creature on paper, right? And then we'd do a Xerox, and then we'd take a Sharpie and we'd black them out, so all we saw was the silhouette. Because that's what you see of monsters and people from a distance. The power of the silhouette is so incredible. And so we see that shape, and so we know if we have an interesting silhouette, the content is just going to be interesting too. There are so many great conversations we had back in the days. I want to repeat one that the one that we had with Jim Cameron on Terminator. So James is really into the power of asymmetrical stuff, right? And in Western society, we read people's faces like we read a book. We read it from the right side to left. And Jim was totally aware of this. So like in the first Terminator movie, for instance, when Arnold is the bad guy robot, they put the cyborg on his left side of the face, okay? So when you read it, the man that is a robot, right? And then in Terminator 2, when Arnold's a good guy, they switch it. And they go, the cyborg that is a man. And that simplicity, like the way that Jim broke it down for us, like, wow, that made so much sense.
It's so fascinating, just to hear all these insights from the storytellers, the creators, the directors, because there's so many decisions that are involved in the filmmaking process.
Especially with James Cameron, because when he walks into the room, he is the smartest man in the room. And he has thought things through so much further than everybody else has. It's really for me, it's a joy to work with people that have really figured stuff out like that. And this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I want to share this story.
Please do, Craig, honestly. Because
it involved actually the eye. We had a moment, Arnold's eye was powered by a little Weetrain light bulb, right, and a 9-volt battery on his back. And one day it broke. Stan Winston had a 40-foot semi-tractor trailer that was our mobile shop. And so I go back to our little mobile shop and I'm soldering the wires back together, right? And at that time, I get a call from one of Stan's other set supervisors, a really wonderful man named John Rosengrant. And John just talking to me on our radio, says, Craig, whatever you do, make sure you are running when you come back. And I'm like, okay. The whole shoot is waiting on me to do this, right? Just waiting on Craig a moment. And so I come running in, and the moment I come running in with it, everybody, there are like 150 people there, they all just burst out laughing. The next thing you know, they're exchanging money. What had happened is just so typical of Arnold. He made a bet. They took a pool about whether I would be walking in or if I would be running in with the thing. And of course, both John and Arnold bet on me being running. So Arnold said, make sure you run. And then, they all collect the money. And then Arnold turns around and gives me like $500.
I love these kind of stories.
He was the king of one-upmanship. And It was fun to watch when you weren't the victim.
Yeah, I'll bet. Thinking of T2, because I guess, of course, that's got, the iconic CG moments with the T1000, the liquid, I guess the technologies at the time of tracking the body. I think that was Spaz Williams as well, where they would draw on the grid of the character, the T1000, and walk in and then developing these technologies to do body tracking, motion tracking. Oh man, there's so many incredible effects in that movie. T2 and it holds up incredibly even to this day. It's one of those movies.
It works pretty well. Yeah, it holds up really well. And one of the things that I always love watching, I just watched it the other day, the helicopter chase. We shot that on the back of a flatbed semi-truck, and they put the helicopter on the flatbed, and they put Robert Patrick in there. And something that nobody notices that actually Robert actually has 4 sets of arms in the helicopter, because he has 2 sets of arms flying the helicopter, and then he's got another set of arms that we sewed onto him shooting the gun. We're on the back of this semi-flatbed truck, and we're screaming down the highway at like 50-something miles an hour shooting those shots. that was really scary stuff. They had this really great helicopter pilot, Chuck Trambero, and he was doing the helicopter stunts, right? Like going underneath the overpasses and going over the overpasses. Going underneath an underpass that's pretty scary, right? But they went over the overpass was actually a much more dangerous maneuver than going under the overpass.
Oh, really?
When the helicopter arches over like that, it unloads the weight of the helicopter blades, and they have a tendency to slice through the tail rotor.
Oh my gosh.
That was a wild night.
Amazing. I guess, what's it like working with someone like Jim where, he does want to do a lot of practical stuff, helicopters, stunts.
He's super smart, like I said before, and I want to point out.
He's already thought out.
He's thought out everything, including safety issues. Like, for instance, there's a shot where the T-1000's on a motorcycle, and he drives through the building and crashes into the helicopter and takes over. We had the motorcycle, and we made a dummy of Robert Patrick, which we made that night. They had it on a catapult right on set, and they're going to shoot the dummy over it and crash it into the helicopter. And the stuntman wants to play the helicopter pilot. He says, "I can do this. I'll just be in the helicopter and we can get some action and it'll be great." And Jim Cameron says, "No, this is way too dangerous. We're propelling like this 2,000-pound motorcycle through the air." And sure enough, what you see that motorcycle crash through the deal, but what you don't see is right after that motorcycle literally tore through that helicopter. And if that guy had been in there, he would have gotten hurt.
I guess that goes on to, the decisions of CG against practical, safety, of course, budget, all that stuff. Is there any times where you felt that when CG was introduced into the industry to that level on movies and things, that it was abused in a way that's like...
Oh, yeah, we did that a lot. Okay, I first want to say that the visual effects supervisor on this particular movie is an absolute genius, and I love him. And he is probably like one of the best visual effects supervisors in the world. Is a guy named Rob Legato. He's got like 6 or 7 Oscars now, Titanic, Jungle Book. He's the guy. I think we all had these marching orders on Interview with a Vampire that we needed to do everything in CG. And so there's this one scene in particular where there's this woman and he bites her in the neck, and it's your classic vampire bite, and she bleeds on her white dress. Typically, we would have gone out and got some Caro syrup and some tubing and some red food color, and we'd do the blood. $12 later, we have an effect. So instead, we decided to do it CG. I swear, and when it was all said and done, it probably cost us close to $150,000 to do that shot.
In the modern sense, like if they're shooting something, because there's many times where it'll be enhanced with CG, or there's an effect that kind of, it works on set a little, but we want to push it a little bit further and we'll add to it with CG elements. What was it like back then? Like, you've got a puppet or an effect that you want to do in camera, keeping up with the demands of the final shot.
Sometimes we would try to rebuild the effect to make it work better. Sometimes we would use whatever we got.
Because that's quick thinking to have to to do things on the fly.
There is a lot of that going on, and there were moments like particularly like on Jurassic Park where we tried an experiment, like when the kid is like closing the freezer door, and the raptor comes out twice. One time and it comes out it's CG, and the other time it comes out it's a puppet. And no one really notices it. It just kind of works.
Did that help sell the CG dinosaurs?
Yeah, because if you're able to intercut between the two of them and no one really notices, that's a huge success. And man, that was like the entire time I was in the theater. There's watching Jurassic Park the first time. There's 14 minutes of puppets and there's 7 minutes of CG.
Oh, really?
And I the whole movie I was just like, is this going to work? Did they buy this? Oh, wow, that kind of worked. Okay.
Yeah.
and it was a very pleasant surprise that everything worked. I mean, we knew it was going to work, but to be accepted like that was great.
You did it. You crazy son of a you did.
Prior to the puppets in movies, if it's a creature, there's a lot of stop motion, so there's a Phil Tippett element.
There was Phil Tippett stop motion in there, and then they decided not to go with it.
And then it went to some puppets
with digital inputs, to puppeteer the puppets inside the computer, which I thought was brilliant because after all, they are stop motion animators, and they give them something physical to animate.
They're still taking influence and leaning on the knowledge of Phil Tippett. Not only just, it's CG, it's gone from puppets to animatronics to CGI. They're all leaning on each other to create the final product. Let's speak to Phil Tippett about how these creatures move. Let's speak to Craig and Stan Winston's team and look at how the textures should be created in CG. So I guess a mix of talent and knowledge.
I think so. I think whatever is the best technique to create a shot, physical or CG, I think that should be used. Do as much as you practically can do in the real world, and then use CGI for the tool that it is and do the stuff that you can't do in the real world. But sometimes, like when you're doing like fake blood stuff, well, okay.
Was you guys on that interview with the vampire shot? Were you guys kind of kicking yourself, thinking, we could just do this for $12? It would look so much better. Or was it a technical challenge for you guys, just as a sense of like, okay, we've got the end goal. They want to do it CG. Let's just enjoy the learning process technically. Or was it just damn, this is stupid?
Yeah. They like, well, we can't put an effects person in there because they'll be in the shot. And they're like, well, we can get like 100 feet of tubing and hide it. But something that, I love to tell my students about this because they don't get it. Moving past Jurassic Park, we're working on Disney's Dinosaur, right? There was no such thing as copy and paste back then. You had to type everything out. When we started out, the animators animated his body, and then the other animators animated his facial stuff. And then at the end of the day, I did what they called the Frankenstein, and I would attach the head to the body.
Oh, God.
I was using all these blend shapes to control the face, and they would fall off. So every day we'd put the head on, and then I would have to hand type about 78 expressions. Horrible math, C is greater than YX minus C, blah, blah, blah. And that was a nightmare. Then we came up with copy and paste, and like, what?
When you look back at like Jurassic Park, or any movie like, around that time, there is no like sliders and undo and this and all these tools today. Like, it's obviously because of that, it evolves in tool sets as well. So the Control-C, Control-V option, that's to overcome a problem of time-consuming inputs and things.
People don't even ask or wonder about, like when they open up a Maya scene and they have their character and they have all those little spline controls, right? Someone had to come up with that.
Yeah, and the IK system, for example.
But the spline thing is, we were working on Dinosaur, and we just moved over to this brand new program called Maya.
Oh yes.
At that time, the animators, they were like reaching in between the polygons and selecting the IKs, or they were selecting the bones. And Candace Miller was my supervisor at the time. She's like, Craig, what were some of the techniques that you guys used in animatronics? And I went over a couple things like cable control and remote control. And then I mentioned simple like rod control, like Kermit the Frog's arms, right? And this Irish guy in our team, Greg McGuire, he just goes, that's brilliant. And he runs off. And 15 minutes later, Greg comes back with an arm control with these 3 cones under it, right? And one cone is for the translation, the other cone's for rotation, the other cone's for scale. And then right next to him is another guy, really brilliant guy named Mark Swain. Mark says, wouldn't it be better to put all those controls on one control? And they go, brilliant. And they both go off, and they come back a couple of minutes later. And now we have all the controls on this cone. But then Candace says, we can't do that because we can't rely on the animators to hide the cones before they render, or we're going to lose thousands of render hours because we're going to have cones in the shot. A guy named Pete McGow, another really great rigger, he says, why don't we make them out of splines? Because they don't render. And that's how that happened. Like in like a little 1 hour period of time, we came up with controls, and still being used today.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
It's interesting that you were kind of having input and knowledge from your background to build tools for the CG world.
It was a nice crossover moment. Yeah. That was a great crossover moment. Yeah. I loved the old days where we had to be really, really clever and come up with clever physical stuff.
Like I say, it's that quick thinking and like a vast knowledge of, we've got a problem, how can we solve it? Were there any moments where you felt practical effects were kind of undervalued in favor of digital?
Oh, yeah, that would be the late 90s.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the late 90s where they could do digital effects, and so they would, and they wouldn't necessarily be good.
Just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And
we're kind of seeing a resurgence of this now because people don't want to pay a lot of money for effects, and they don't give people any time to do the effects. And so, those 3 things, good, fast, cheap, pick any 2.
You can't have all 3.
We don't get those anymore. I see where our work suffers sometimes because we just don't have the time to do it.
Yeah. moving on to the future of visual effects, it's spanned, a 45-year career up to this point. Things are obviously going to change. Tools are improving, and it's changing every day. And it feels like now it's changing every hour.
Yeah. How do we even keep up? It's crazy.
It is crazy, especially with the world of AI. I mean, I don't know if we can brush on it.
Yeah, because it's the elephant in the room, right?
It is. And especially, talking about the craftsmanship, all the hard work. But it's inevitable that it's a tool, I believe, at the end of the day. And
use it for the tool that it can be used for.
100%. And I wrote something down here. I put CGI was, of course, a new tool that entered into the industry. And many considered that as cheating in some respect, that it would never replace in-camera VFX. What are your thoughts on AI as a tool in the VFX and animation world? And what are some of the most useful ways AI can assist animators and VFX artists?
Right.
It's a two-part question there, I guess.
One thing I think that we can use AI as a tool that it's meant to be, and I'll use an example. I was at Disney in like 2005, 2006, and we were converting Beauty and the Beast to stereo, which meant taking every frame of film into a nuke-like program. Back in the day, it was called Shake. And then we had to draw gray mask, black and white gray mask for every layer so that we could pull off the stereo conversion. And it would take about 20 or 30 minutes to do a single frame.
Really?
Like 25 of us working for like 5 months to do this, right? Now you have like programs like Zoe Depth. You could take that frame and put it in there, and 2 seconds later, you're going to get a depth mask that's better than the one that you could have made. And so now, like imagine a team of like 5 people could do a whole movie in several weeks.
Yeah.
And we're not killing ourselves in our wrists doing hand drawings and stuff like that. We're working smarter. We're using those tools for what they're meant to be. And then on the other hand, I don't see AI. I don't feel like it can create an emotional story to tell. We can still use it to help inspire us, create things and automate stuff like that. But once we start going, hey, AI, make us a love story, we've all seen that crap on YouTube. It's completely void of story. I feel like that, okay, so we have AI. Everybody go out and learn to become great storytellers, and then come back and use these tools.
That leads me on to this confusing 5-part question or thought that I've tried to put down. Many believe that currently AI lacks the ability to truly capture the emotional depth that makes storytelling compelling.
Yeah.
Some may say that CGI lacks the depth compared to a physical in-camera puppet or model. And why is it that we as an audience can still connect so well with CGI characters? You've got Avatar and digital characters like that, but we struggle to connect with AI stories and characters. Is it that humans drive the CGI more like puppeteers? And could AI prompters one day become the new puppeteers?
Absolutely. I think they can. Yeah, I think it's a matter of like, the first time you pick up a tool, you don't know how to use it. And like, okay, hammer. And it takes you a couple attempts to actually learn how to hammer that nail in. And that's what we're doing now. We got these new tools. We're learning how to use them in a correct, creative way. And it'll happen. I'm like when black and white television came out, oh, it's just a fad. And when the radio came out, no, that's not going to last. And
yeah.
And there's always those technophobes that they don't want it. But then sometimes it's for a good reason though. We get these tools, they improve, and we learn to use them in a sense that helps us creatively. And we're still in the very beginning of AI, where, man, like you said, it's changing every minute.
Yeah, literally.
As an educator, I find that really daunting, because 10 years ago, I went out and I bought these Axis Neuron magnetic capture suits so we could teach students how to use motion capture. Now there's there's a system online called Radical, where all you need is your webcam and a browser, and it does better motion capture than these old suits do. It's amazing.
And I do love the period that we're in where we see so many people experimenting. some not so successful. But it's just a great time where people are using these new tools in different ways, and things will evolve from it. And you'll look back and say, oh, look what that once was. So it's definitely an interesting period.
It's a really interesting time. Yeah. I've seen tools, and I have like former students that are out there. They're shooting cameras in like the forest, and you're using depth max, and they're able to get virtual production without virtual screens.
Yeah.
The tools are out there. People need to learn to become good storytellers.
Story is always the key. Everything should serve the story. So you're now a chair of 3D animation VFX and NYFA. You mentioned that in your introduction. What's the most important lesson that you could teach for aspiring artists getting into the industry?
Yeah, there's a couple that I'll share. There's a saying here in Hollywood: early is on time is late, and late is being fired. I know it's simple, but
it's so true.
It is very true. And then the other thing, the really most important, one of the important things that I've seen here is, and I fell prey to this in my early years, this actually revolves around Stan Winston. We were working on Terminator 2, and my wife and I were expecting our first baby. And I was, Mr. Work in the monster stuff. I just hate, breathe, slept monsters, creatures stuff. Right? That was me. Craig, you need to have your priorities in your life need to be straight. And he says your first priority needs to be your health, and your second priority needs to be your family, and then your third priority needs to be your job and your career. And you never mix those up, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. If you don't have family, you have nobody to share your success with. And there were a lot of cases where I was putting my career first and stuff, and that was a real eye opener for me to get those priorities straight in your life. And that's what I tell every graduating class that goes through NYFA, that this is the best advice I can give you.
Everybody's done it. And I guess there needs to become a point where you reevaluate, can I do this without burning out for the next 4 months? I can't sustain this level of 18-hour, 16-hour days, because that's not going to end well.
Like if you take a crew, and let's say they work 8 hours, right? But now they got to go into crunch mode. Now they got to go work 12 hours. Pretty soon, they're going to be less productive at 12 hours than they would have been at 8 hours. And that was one of the cool things that, again, going back to Stan Winston, when it came to a show where it looked like we're going to put in long hours, he said, we're not doing that. We're hiring more people.
Definitely. It's so difficult because it's unsustainable, as well as budgets getting shrunken. And expectations
it's
still
unreal.
It is unreal. It's something's got to give, and it shouldn't be someone's health at the end of the day.
No, it shouldn't be. And and they've here in California, they've even had to enact laws, on Titanic. One of the assistant cinematographers, after working an 18-hour day, he fell asleep at the wheel on driving home and crashed and died. And
I think I've read that story.
The plus thing was, at the time, was Arnold was our governor, and so he helped push that through. Just be cognizant of your health, because your body has to last, and these movies, they're going to come and go.
That's a great piece of advice. What's the weirdest or funniest thing that's ever happened on set while working with animatronics?
I was in Japan, wearing those giant monster suits from the 1984 Tobe Hooper movie, Invaders from Mars. The costume weighed about 175 pounds, but on top of that, you had a little person riding on a chair on your back to operate the mouth and the arms. And so she was about 70 pounds. I'm in this nightclub area of Japan called Shibuya. We're doing live action things. There's myself and another guy in one of these costumes, and we're going out on the street and running around on the street for a few minutes, and then we come back. And so I'm out there. I bump into something. I don't know what it was. And right then I get this radio message like, Craig, it's time to come back. You need to come back now. And oh, no, I'm doing really great. I just get out here. And like, no, you don't understand. Come back now. I'm like, okay. I had accidentally knocked over a Yakuza.
Oh, shit.
Right on his butt. And in Japan, you give these people a respect. Like when you see a Yakuza walking down the street, people part. And I didn't see him. So I knocked him over. And then I proceeded to grind his ankle in the ground with my 220 pounds, Debbie's 75 pounds, and the 175 pounds of the monster suit. So we were like crushing his ankle. And so we go back in. We were in this theater, and they get me out of the costume. And they said the guy is out of the front door of the theater. He's really pissed. Yeah,
This could have been the end of your career here, Craig.
yeah. And so what they did is they ran a van up to the back of the theater, just close enough just to get the doors of the theater open. And then they had me duck down, and we all went into the van and we tore off.
Really?
But that was a moment.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's a crazy story. To wrap up, we've got a couple of questions from our audiences. One is from Colin Humphreys, who I know is the biggest Jurassic Park fan in the world, he would say.
Yeah, excellent.
And he says, I'd like to know Craig's thoughts on the effects of modern Jurassic World compared to Jurassic Park. He says, personally, I feel Jurassic Park still holds tight today and feels very believable, where Jurassic World currently, you can tell it's an animated creature, I think for the CG parts.
I see a lot of floaty dinosaurs, and they don't have the gravity that a giant dinosaur would have. The animation just becomes like an issue because I don't know that they have enough time to do it. And then occasionally you just see where the compositing and the lightings don't really line up and stuff. And so that kind of, for me, that becomes kind of an issue. The thing that I do like, when I watched Jurassic World the first time, I saw 3 or 4 shots where they had copied our motions from the first movie. And it was very like, there's Blue doing that little thing that we did. That's kind of... And that to me was tremendously gratifying. There were several moments in Jurassic World and the recent movies where the raptors and the characters, they're moving across the landscape at like hypersonic speeds. Our eyes are telling us something's wrong with that speed, that is too fast or something's wrong with it. And it's I guess maybe that goes into the uncanny valley experience where we can still detect super subtle subconscious things in our brains that tell us, wait, this isn't right. Something's off here.
Interesting. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for answering that. We've got a question from Technovu, who was in fact our last guest on the show, Rasmus Poulsen. He asked, in an industry that's always evolving, what has remained a constant for you?
That's a good question.
It's a good question.
I think one of the things that has been really, and this is not going to be the answer you're looking for, but I made coworkers and friends on Ghostbusters who are still my friends and coworkers today.
Brilliant.
We still network and we still help each other out. And so I cannot stress the importance of networking and staying in touch with your friend, your network and your friends and stuff, because like I used to say, it's who you know that gets you through the door, then it's what you know that keeps you in the door. And that has been true for me in many cases. Like when I was working at Digital Domain, I worked with Jim Hillen, and then he went off to work for Disney. And then a couple months later, he's, hey, you want to come work for Disney? And I'm like, okay, sure. And so that's, can't stress the importance of that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Craig. A question from Nishan 3D says, what was your favorite part of the VFX process back in the 80s and 90s? And what's your favorite part of the industry these days?
Puppeteering, hands down. Being on the set, working one-on-one with the director and him saying, I want you to do this. And then you're able to pull off this occasionally wonderful performance that everybody goes, wow, that was great. That is so rewarding. That to me was super rewarding. CG wise, it's first off, it was very disappointing to go from a live action world to a CG world where you don't even see the directors, or sometimes you never even meet them. So you don't get that one-on-one thing, which was very disappointing to begin with. But when you're able to get something to work really, really well in Maya or Houdini, and it just works, that's rewarding.
That's a reward for sure.
And then that's the fun part, is like, okay, we have 10 different solutions for that. Which one should we use? That's the best solution and the easiest solution, looks the best. So I like the cleverness that you can come up with on computers, especially because these programs have evolved so far that it's not just one solution. There are multiple solutions that you can try in the same program to accomplish your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. What's it like problem solving on a computer compared to problem solving with a puppet where you have to physically find things out?
There was a lot of like, well, it was, like we would like take the job and then figure out how to do it, right? Oh yeah, we can do that.
We still do this to this day. We say yes and then figure it out.
Then it still do it, yeah. It seems like it's the same amount of time whether you're making an animatronic puppet or you're doing something, it's going to take you like 3 or 4 weeks to create the mechanics for that puppet, but it's also going to take you 3 or 4 weeks to properly rig a character. In terms of like facial controls and stuff, I love the subtlety that you can get out of CG now, right? If you'd come up to me and like when I was playing with my Amiga in 1980 stuff, and it said, hey, by 2025, you're going to have photorealistic characters on your computer that you cannot tell. And I would go, BS.
Yeah.
No freaking way. And here we are.
What do you think is in the next 25, 30, 35 years? And not that you can predict the future as such, Craig, but what do you feel like where we could be in the VFX industry?
I think the tools are going to continue on the trend that they are now. Like they're going to create better tools, but they're going to create simpler tools, easier to use, and the prices will go down, and that will make them more available to the mainstream person. Someone comes up to me and says, I want to make a movie, but I don't have a camera. And I go, you have a phone. Your phone is better resolution than movies were 10 years ago. So make your movie. It's like James Cameron says, now you're a filmmaker. Go make another one and see if you can get people to pay for it.
Yeah. Craig, I could genuinely speak for a lot longer.
But let's get together again some other time.
Why the hell not? I would love to. Just talk nostalgic, just stuff, new stuff, old stuff.
Yeah, I have had a lot of fun talking with you guys today. I would love to do it again.
Brilliant. We really appreciate your time, Craig, and hanging out with us.
All right, guys. It's really great meeting you guys.
You too.
And let's do this again. Okay?
We will do. I hope so.
Take care.